Welcome to Destination Digest from England's first destination development partnership, Destination North East England. And there again, the intro includes multiple references to the word destination, and we're only a few seconds in. My name is Johnny Chambers, and I am delighted to be joined by a bumper number of guests. This is the most guests I've ever had on the podcast, which is very, very exciting, to discuss all things accessibility, inclusion, and disability. So I'm delighted to be joined by Ross Calladine, Jane Cooper, and Carrie-Ann Lightly. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So we'll go along the line. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit more about what you do and the organisation you're from.
Morning, I'm Ross Calladine. I'm the Accessibility and Inclusion Lead at VisitEngland, which is part of the National Tourism Agency, along with Visit Britain. And I lead on our work programme to make the whole of England more accessible and inclusive. We want it to be the most accessible destination in Europe. And at the moment, I also wear another hat to be the government-appointed Disability and Access Ambassador for the tourism industry.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hi, Johnny. I'm Jane Cooper from Access and Inclusion UK. And we work around the country and beyond, around the UK and beyond, to help businesses to be welcoming and inclusive for everyone. I'm also currently the chair of England's Inclusive Tourism Action Group. And I also come with, I'm a parent of a young lady who has a very rare chromosome condition. So I have lived experience for the past 27 years as well.
Hi, my name's Carrie-Ann Lightly. I'm Head of Marketing and Communications at AccessAble. We're a leading provider of detailed disabled access information, and we've been providing this information to disabled people and carers for 25 years. I have lived experience of disability. I'm a wheelchair user. I have cerebral palsy. And I've been working more broadly in accessible tourism since around 2005. And I also share my own experiences of travel and tourism as a blogger and travel writer.
Fantastic. Welcome all. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. We're fresh from our Purple Tuesday event at the lovely Northern Stage, which is where we're recording today. We've just been in a room full of businesses and industry leaders and regional stakeholders who have all come together to mark what is an international campaign celebrating disability, accessibility and inclusion around the world. And I just want to touch on, first of all, then, what do we mean when we say accessibility and inclusion, especially in the tourism and hospitality space?
Yes, we're talking about tourism experiences that can be enjoyed by everyone, people with physical, sensory, cognitive impairments, but anyone really who has a requirement related to accessibility. Often people with access requirements don't relate to the language of disability. They don't see themselves as disabled, and that's absolutely fine. And I think it's just about providing a personal experience, a warm welcome to everyone, regardless of their requirements.
And why is accessibility and inclusion such a key strategic priority for Visit England? You know, this is the national tourism body. This is a key part of their work. So why is it so important for them?
Yeah, well, we know that there is exclusion happening, every day all over the world. And in our industry, we want to tackle that. We want everyone to be included, taking part in tourism. But that's not the case at the moment. We know that 50% of disabled people didn't take any overnight trips in England in the last 12 months. And that compares to 35% of non-disabled people. And we want to address that. There's a big market. It's worth over £14 billion a year to the English tourism economy. That's how much people with health conditions and impairments and their travelling companions spend on tourism trips every year. And of course, there's legal obligations as well with the Equality Act. So I think there's plenty of drivers why it's important to Visit England and to our tourism industry as a whole.
And, let's just touch on those numbers there very quickly. We talk about wanting to double the value of the visitor economy. That's the goal of Destination North East England over the next 10 years. And you're saying that a huge percentage of people with a disability are not taking an overnight trip, and an even larger percentage perhaps are not getting the experience that they should be getting when they go on that trip. So from a purely business perspective as well, it really does make sense for destinations to improve that experience for people with disabilities, because there is a huge market there that isn't being catered for.
Absolutely. I mean, the official numbers of disabled people across the UK is 16.1 million people. That's 1 in 4 of the population. So if our businesses aren't built to be inclusive and our teams aren't welcoming, then you're potentially alienating a quarter of your potential visitors. So yeah, it's a business imperative, and it's just the right thing to do.
And Jane, you've been working with Visit England on the LVEP toolkit, and you've worked with businesses for a number of years now as well. What does that journey look like when it comes to developing new tools and new frameworks to improve that accessibility and inclusion piece?
We worked on the LVEP toolkit, as you mentioned, which is all about creating accessible destinations and supporting the teams in each destination to go on that journey and support their businesses too. So we researched globally the best practice in creating accessible destinations and put together a toolkit full of tools, which has got 3 key stages to it. So the first is to help people to understand about accessibility and inclusion and the basics of creating an accessible destination. We then created a program to really kickstart accessible destination development by bringing together the information on accessible products, services and information. And then the third is a more kind of in-depth development process for businesses to create some quality assured products. And the benefits of that are that it can help a destination by showcasing its accessible tourism products to make them easier to book. There are benefits for businesses because, again, it's making them more visible and bookable, and benefits for disabled travellers and their companions because they can then find things that best meet their needs. And what we've also done is signposted the destinations to the other great resources that are out there, including the new business toolkit. And we're really encouraging the destinations to support their businesses to look at that, which is full of top tips, action checklists and guidance. So we're trying to make it easy to use the great things that are already out there as well.
And obviously we've developed the regenerative tourism framework. And a big part of that is accessibility and inclusion and how we leave a positive impact on our people, our place and our planet. And that kind of leaving a positive impact on people is, I think, a really key part of this, isn't it? And that work to influence destinations to embed this at every single stage of their tourism development.
Absolutely. And I think, the programme here in the North East has been called Everybody Welcome. And that is what this is about. It's making everybody welcome, and giving people those great experiences, creating those memories. Tourism is an emotional business. It's about creating those emotions and connections with places and those fantastic memories. So it's supporting businesses to be able to do that in every aspect of its offering. And I think if I would sum up what this is really about, it's about thoughtfulness, and it's about helping businesses to put themselves in their visitors' shoes and think what would give them a really great time with us. And the good news is that visitor economy businesses are already great at providing that welcome. And this is simply expanding that a little bit and thinking about it in some broader terms. So they're already good at it. It's just kind of doing it a little bit, maybe a little bit differently, a little bit more.
And not overcomplicating it.
Absolutely.
That's it, isn't it? It's keeping it nice and simple and looking at those key steps that have been put out there in the toolkits and the frameworks that are available to businesses as well, and making sure that they're not overwhelmed by all of that support that's available, that actually small things, small changes can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely right. And what we've started to do, and this will be the future of the part of the future of the Everybody Welcome initiative here in the North East, is to really align Everybody Welcome with the great things that Visit England have created over the past couple of years, and to give them a really simple process to sort of improve their accessibility and inclusion. And all we're asking of businesses at the moment is to publish their key accessibility features, and so that people are very clear and they can plan a visit with ease. And it's a really small call to action. So it's sign up for Everybody Welcome on the Destination Northeast website. And then they'll have lots of prompts of things that they can look at and tools they can use. And if they do nothing else, just signpost, producing that accessibility information for their own business would be an enormous step forward.
And one of the key things you can do right now as well, Carrie-Ann, to bring you in on this is AccessAble's accessibility assessments. And Just explain a little bit more about what those are and how useful they can be, not only for someone with disabilities, but also for a business to learn about their own operation as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So we believe that accessibility starts before you get through the door. It starts when you're planning your visit to travel somewhere, to go for a day trip, to go to a new place or space. And we know from our own research that 77% of disabled people have not visited a venue because they couldn't find out about accessibility before they went. So at AccessAble, we create detailed access guides, and we use trained surveyors to create those detailed access guides. And that means that the venue has been professionally assessed. We quality assure the information. We guarantee a level of accuracy within that information so that the disabled person can trust that they're getting complete accuracy, that they know what they've read, what they've seen in photographs before they've gone is what they expect to find when they get there. And that has ultimately led to us having over 6 million users of our website and our detailed access guides on an annual basis. So that's excellent for businesses because it puts them in front of a ready-made, really engaged audience. But the benefit to businesses, as well as having that expectation management piece, that really clear and vital information, is that they can also receive a confidential to business eyes only accessibility improvement report, which will talk to them about actions that they can make, low cost, no cost, anything that they can do to make the space more inclusive, aligned with national best practice. And at the moment, there are real opportunities for businesses to be able to sign up with really compelling discounts. So we worked with VisitEngland to match fund some discounts. So there are some for smaller venues where they can get a detailed access guide for just £1 plus VAT. And then we have some other discounts for larger venues as well.
And, you know, that discount is hugely beneficial as well, because businesses may be thinking, oh, in order to go on this accessibility journey, it's going to cost me lots of money and it's going to cost me lots of time. And you know, what would you say to those businesses that maybe are reluctant to start or just do something?
I think it is about progress over perfection. It is about being transparent about exactly what you have, because as a wheelchair user, personally, not everywhere can be accessible to me, and I accept that, but everywhere can tell me what they have and what they haven't got, so I can make that choice myself, be empowered as a disabled person. As we said, there are discounts available, which means that this doesn't have to come at a huge cost to a business. And again, they're costed very low. The prices start from around £85 plus VAT for a single assessment for a smaller venue. There's a sliding scale depending on the type and size of business, but we're very transparent. This is all available up front. And again, as I said, there's information contained in an accessibility improvement report, which is, this information might be things like making sure that you've got a hearing loop that's working and has been tested recently. It's not always about building ramps, knocking walls down, all that kind of thing.
And, you know, to touch on your point there, Jen, about thoughtfulness as well, it kind of initiatives like AccessAble's accessibility guides and those assessments and what have you, they kind of really coach you to be thoughtful, don't they? And actually maybe think about things in a different way and maybe look at disability in a different way as well. So you're not necessarily, like you said, focusing on building ramps or what have you. So how important is it for businesses to approach disability from a bit of a different angle and approach accessibility from a different angle?
I think it's vital, really, because it's wheelchair users are a very important audience to consider, and that is actually 7% of the total number of disabled people. So there are a lot of other accessibility requirements to bear in mind. As Ross said, it's around about 25% of the population, and if you then think that those people are likely very often to travel with someone else, and the number of visits that those accessibility requirements impact on is suddenly great. You're suddenly talking about everybody. So this is not only about getting people into your building, it's also about engaging with your building and enhancing the visitor experience for everyone. Because I know from sort of first-hand experience with my dad wears 2 hearing aids, except he doesn't wear them. They're in a drawer at home.
Yeah, that sounds like mine.
Yeah. Yep. So that means that when we visit somewhere, that suddenly it's a barrier because he doesn't have the audio information. So a really simple change that would help him would be to have more written information, or if there's a tour happening, to have a transcript of the tour. There are really simple changes that people can make. And so this is about lifting the entire visitor experience by being thoughtful. And that can be from, as we've talked about already, providing information online. It might be that you have a pop-up banner in your reception that says, if you need a little bit of extra support during your visit, here are some of the things we've got, like portable seating, like a hearing loop, like an audio guide, like a quiet space, whatever it might be, sensory backpacks, for example. Other examples might be providing a walking stick holder on a reception counter. Again, my dad uses a stick. It's on the floor half of the time because it slides over. It might be providing seating at regular intervals, or it might be, looking at the other end of the scale, a changing places toilet, which has a hoist and a changing bench, and they're needed by over 250,000 people in the UK. Without those facilities, those people either stay at home, go out for a couple of hours at a time, or be changed on a toilet floor. So, if you're thinking about the adjustments you can make, depending on your time, your resources, your budget, there are probably a million things that you can do to make an enormous difference. The other one, which doesn't cost anything and which any business can do, is make changes to their customer service. So that might be, for example, just being proactive. We go to Sheffield Arena and the staff are really proactive, and they say, don't know if this is relevant to you, but we have a quiet space if your daughter would appreciate that. Another example might be that if someone is a visitor who is a blind person, offering to read the menu out for them. Or it could be making sure that there's space between the tables in a cafe so that a wheelchair user is able to navigate with ease. So lots and lots of things you can do. And all of this guidance, I'm pleased to say, including sort of quick wins, low cost, no cost solutions, and other things, are within the new Visit England Accessible and Inclusive Tourism Toolkit for businesses, which is a great resource. And I'd advocate any business to go and look at that. A great sort of set of guidance to have in your virtual bottom drawer.
And what a wonderful segue to ask Ross about this now. So the Visit England Business Toolkit, this has been something that the organisation has been working on for a while now, and it's something you really wanted to get right and really wanted to make sure that this was going to be something that really impacted businesses and impacted the customer experience for visitors as well. So could you explain a little bit more about what it entails and why it was so important to get it right?
Yes, Visit England has co-produced a lot of guidance for tourism businesses on how to be more accessible and inclusive over many years. But what we realised is that they were held in standalone guides. They'd all been produced at different times with different styles. And we thought what we could do is really recreate this, pull it all together, and provide a best-in-class holistic toolkit for businesses, which is what we spent about a year working with an organisation called MIMA. So an organisation who supports and develops accessibility in lots of different sectors, but helped us to really get this right and co-produce it with input from lots of different groups, representing people with lots of different lived experience of disability. And we know that there's a lot in the toolkit. If you're going to do a holistic toolkit covering all the different aspects of accessibility, there's going to be a lot of content. So what we've done is we've broken that down, and we've got the top 20 tips, which has been produced as well over the years with input from England's Inclusive Tourism Action Group. So again, lots of co-production. And really, if you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, turn to those top 20 tips. And then going on from there, there's an action checklist for every type of tourism business. So we've got one for visitor attractions, one for self-catering, serviced accommodation, food and beverage venues, and event venues and producers as well. So find your checklist, and actually, when you start to work through the items in the checklist, you'll probably realize you're already doing a number of items on there. So rarely are you starting, this journey from the start. You're probably going to be part way along, but it can help you chart your journey. And you do that in line with your budget, with your resources, and you just gradually chip away at making little improvements each year. And then in a few years' time, you'll look back and you'll probably be pleasantly surprised at the progress that you've made.
I think what you'll find is as well, when you look back on that journey and where you've come from as well, that's a hugely rewarding piece of work as a business, because you can then start making improvements on the improvements that you implemented at the beginning too. So it's a continual process.
It's a continuous process. And, like lots of topics that we're working on in our business, sustainability, accessibility, it's never complete. It's always a journey. And to Carrie-Ann's point, definitely it is about progress over perfection. This isn't about thinking that we can be accessible to everyone. Because as we've said, no one's accessible to everyone, but everyone can be accessible to someone. So yeah, it's about chipping away, but constantly having that dialogue with disabled people and people with access requirements. And I think this pilot in the Northeast, the destination development pilot, is a really fantastic opportunity for businesses across the Northeast region to make this region the best, the most inclusive, the most accessible destination. And there's just so much support available right now. I'd encourage any business in the visitor economy to take part, sign up to the Everybody Welcome programme. Our toolkit is freely available on the Visit England, Visit Britain industry website. So you can find that by just going visitengland.org/access. You can find that toolkit, download those tips, those checklists, and just get the tips and ideas and the case studies. It's full of case studies from across the country. So learn from others, see, the innovative things that they've done, and implement them in your business. And
I think that's what we were discussing upstairs in the Purple Tuesday event that we held today, was that power of partnerships, that power of learning from each other and creating a community that can support everybody through this. And Carrie-Ann, you actually visited the region as a visitor. You visited a number of places. You blog about them as a disabled person. So how did you find the Northeast? And what was it about the Northeast that you thought, wow, they're getting this right? This has made my visit incredible. I really enjoyed this.
So I genuinely, one of my favourite destinations, one of my favourite places to come, one of my favourite regions to explore.
We'll end the podcast there.
Genuinely. Because of the brilliant experiences that I've had. First of all, I'm a person who loves a coastal break, particularly in the UK. And so it's brilliant to have the opportunity to do that in the Northeast, which is relatively close to where I live. It's only a couple of hours drive away. And that makes it more accessible to me. But in terms of, where I've been and the fantastic experiences I've had, I had one of my favourite UK breaks ever in Seaburn, stayed in some excellent accommodation there. Found a detailed access guide to the promenade and the beach before I went, which told me that there was a changing places toilet available, a public changing places toilet on the promenade, which, as Jane will know, is an incredibly rare thing. So the fact that I came across that, but also that I could find information about it in advance and find that it needed an access code and find the access code. All of that made my day go so much more smoothly, rather than if I hadn't had the detailed information, I would have probably come across the changing places toilet and thought, oh, that's great. That's really exciting. But how do we get in? Okay, we need to find some more information. And it just kind of creates stress that doesn't need to be there otherwise, I guess.
And what do you look for when you're booking a trip away? And what are the things that you would really kind of put you off going somewhere?
So I want, particularly my trip booking experience, I want my trip booking experience to be as smooth as possible. I'm already going to have to spend more time researching because that is just the reality of travel as a disabled person. But I then don't want to have to spend more time booking in an alternative way because, for example, I can't book an accessible room on the website. Everybody else can book a standard room, but accessible rooms you have to call to book. If that situation happens, then I will likely just go to another venue, just find somewhere where I can book in the same way as everybody else because I don't have that time to spare, I'm afraid. And I want to feel like an equal customer, like my business and my money is taken seriously. And I want to be able to make my own informed choice about whether or not a venue is suitable for me. So if somebody came to me and said, oh, no, you can't come here, our venue isn't wheelchair accessible, Well, that would turn me off instantly, obviously. But it also kind of raises that question in my mind, like, how do you know? How do you know that your venue isn't suitable for me? Because actually, for me personally, that changes on the day sometimes. And I'm the expert in what I need. And if you can provide me with enough reliable information, that I can make that choice myself.
And again, it goes back to that listening thing, like listen to people, listen to what they're saying, listen to their expertise and their lived experience. And that is unbelievably powerful. And Jane, you know, when you're speaking to businesses and over the years when you've gone into organisations and you've helped them on their accessibility and inclusion journey, what is it that businesses say to you that are the challenges or the barriers to them starting this, and kind of what did you do to help them overcome that?
I think one of the challenges is that there's still an assumption that when we talk about accessibility, that it's going to be complicated, that it's going to be costly, that it's going to be difficult, that it's about major changes, and I you know, it's really communicating the fact that it's actually as a starting point. It's not about that. It's about providing very clear information online, making sure that your staff are equipped and trained to provide the warmest of welcomes, and making sure that you can make some of the small changes that will make a big difference. But it's also communicating the fact that this is about providing a warm welcome, which is what they are. That's their business. So this is about that. It's simply thinking about that in a broader way. As I said earlier on, there are so many quick wins that cost nothing or very little that you can implement to just get you started. And I think the other thing that businesses say, we don't know where to start. And so this, just looking at those, publish your information, your accessibility information, make it easy to find, and then think about some quick wins that can get you started. I think that is a really good beginning point. And I think then businesses, once they see the changes being made and the impact on their visitors, it gives them a taste to want to do more. And it's not just about getting people in; it's about enhancing that visitor experience for everyone. And that's what businesses want. And by the way, it will get more people visiting and probably spending longer and spending more, which is no bad thing.
Exactly. We want as many people as possible to visit the region and do so in a way that leaves a positive impact on the region as well. And one of the great ways you can do that is by making sure everyone can access it in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on them, doesn't have a negative impact on the destination. And, it becomes a no-brainer then to grow in that regenerative way, which is what we're really keen to push.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other barriers as well can be for a business or for individual members of staff is that they're frightened of saying the wrong thing, and therefore they don't say anything. So what I try to say to people is, be yourself, be welcoming. If you worry about being too politically correct, you'll never say anything to anyone. So be yourself, be proactive, suggest things that might be helpful to improve someone's visit, and be thoughtful. Put yourself in someone else's shoes, and I really think you'll not go far wrong.
And that's such a wonderful bit of advice, isn't it? It's always just to be yourself, and don't overthink it, don't overcomplicate it. Just actually do what you know to be the right thing. And Ross, when you're wearing your government hat as well, how important are all of these conversations that we're hearing from businesses and the work that the DDP is doing, all of that sort of stuff? How important is that in terms of the government's thinking and the government's strategy for accessibility and inclusion?
Well, thinking about international tourism, this is a globally competitive market. So we're not the only destination that's woken up to the importance of accessible and inclusive tourism. There are many destinations around the world running great projects right now. Germany, Spain, Portugal more recently, and then further afield, we know there's great work in Australia, certain parts of the USA. So there's good practice globally. And we've got to be at the forefront of that. We want to be leaders. We want to be one of the most accessible tourism countries. And to do that, we need to try new things. We need to be innovative. And that's what is happening in the Northeast with the DDP pilot funding from government and supported by VisitEngland. We're able to have it as a test bed, try things out. And I think the support is there right now for the businesses. And we're already seeing the benefits that it's having for the visitor economy. So the Northeast is on a trajectory when it comes to access and inclusion, and that those learnings are going to be taken in how Visit England supports other destinations around the country. So other local visitor economy partnerships, there are accredited destination organisations. They will be benefiting from the toolkit which Jane has authored for us, and it follows those approaches. It takes the learnings from the Northeast. So the work that's going on here on Everybody Welcome is hugely beneficial for how we take the whole of England forward in this space.
And I was in Disneyland Paris in June, and their access scheme, I think, is one of the best I've seen. The person I was travelling with has a chronic pain condition, can't stand for very long, uses a stick, and you kind of provide your access requirements before you go. They then give you a specific lanyard that tells you which attractions you can go on, which ones you can't because of the evacuation procedures and what have you. And it just meant you didn't have to have that conversation when you got to each and every ride about what your access requirements were. So I thought that was just a fantastic example of a visitor economy business, albeit a very well-funded and very big visitor economy business doing that. But do you have any examples of other businesses that you think have just done a really great job, even just implementing something really simple?
I've got a couple that I can think of. One is a very recent one, which is Atwell Farm Park, which is in Worcestershire. And what they've done is basically listened. So they thought, we want to be accessible. They've sought advice, and they've listened to it and implemented, actually done something. So it's kind of don't just kind of ask and listen. They've actually practically done some things. Really, really simple things such as including a kind of a QR code that links to audio information for each of the animals on the farm. When they created their new sandpit, they made sure that it was level access into that for everyone. They created a changing places toilet and was so forward thinking that they created next to it a baby changing room with exactly the same dimensions as the changing places toilet, just in case they need a second one. You can pick up ear defenders to borrow at the reception desk. So they've done some fantastic things. Another example would be the Cooper Gallery, which is in Barnsley. And they've got lots of things, portable seating, all kinds of lovely things. But what they did is they created a pop-up banner so that when you walk into the Cooper Gallery reception, it talks about, we want everyone to feel welcome. Here are some things that might help you during your visit. We have audio guides, a quiet space, sensory backpacks, all the things that someone might need to know, but they haven't got to search for it. It's right there in front of them, costs next to nothing, and will make a massive difference for people. And again, I think another one, if I can just sort of throw another one in, because I think this is something every business can do. Merlin, and I know it's a massive attraction, massive chain, but they have what they call it an Intel group. But what it is basically is a staff team with lived experience that help them to develop their accessibility and inclusion. And I know every business will have an expert team within their business without even knowing it. So it's, can you create the environment where people are okay to share their own experience, whether it be themselves or a family member, and give that advice and help that business develop? It's free there. It's engaging your staff, and it's helping your visitors. So it's so beneficial. If use your team, because the expertise is there.
And we heard from an attraction here in the region, Beamish Museum, and they've implemented dementia friendliness at every single level of their organisation. So every single new member of staff is trained in dementia acceptance and the dementia friendliness programme. And I think it is really important, isn't it, that at every level of your organisation, you have people that are not just necessarily your access champion, but people that are constantly thinking about ways in which they can improve accessibility. And for someone with an access requirement, for example, I'm assuming, you want to be able to walk up to any member of staff and, receive that experience that you need as a disabled person.
Oh, absolutely. I think this speaks to what Jane mentioned earlier, but I always think of it in this way, like good customer service is just good customer service. It's about tailoring your approach to that individual's needs. And I don't necessarily want to have to sit and wait in a reception for somebody to go and get a staff member who is, confident enough to speak to a disabled person, that would really turn me off. That would really impact my visit. And so I think it is that training piece is super important, just to really build that staff confidence level. And yeah, I want to be able to speak to somebody in the cafe and the attraction, outside in the car park, etc. I might need help at all those points. I might need assistance at all those points, and that is important to remember.
And we're coming to the end of our time, unfortunately. But I just wanted to quickly touch on this with you, Ross. Obviously, innovation is a big part of the government's agenda, and what we want to do as a nation really is to show that we're an innovative nation. How are we kind of approaching the kind of emerging technologies, for example, that can help this space? We in the Northeast are working with our 5G immersive lab to look at how 5G technologies can maybe improve the accessibility journey in terms of being able to get that information, be able to connect to the internet to get that information, for example. So what are your thoughts on how technology can help?
I think AI is going to be interesting. We spoke a lot today about the amount of effort that needs to go into researching a trip for disabled people. They have to search in lots of different places for information. Sometimes they, are Googling all the time. So I think AI can really unlock the planning experience for disabled people. So I'm interested. I'm looking at how that's developing in the AI space. But really up in the Northeast with the project at the moment, you can have someone come in and actually create a 3D tour of your venue. And that's hugely beneficial for people, particularly neurodiverse people who have anxiety about visiting a new space. They can have a degree of familiarization with that. So tech, I think, can be a massive enabler for disabled people. But obviously the tech itself has to be inclusive. If we're looking at internet-based solutions, websites have to be built technically to be accessible, for people to navigate, using a keyboard rather than using a mouse, for example, visually impaired people who use a screen reader. So we have advice in the toolkit on actually making your website and your social media channels inclusive technically as well.
I think that it's really interesting, isn't it, that whole piece around how some of the challenges that we maybe do have in terms of access could be solved by some innovations and technology that's still yet to come online and come through as well. But nothing replaces those small little changes and thoughtfulness and good customer service, which is, I think, what it all comes back down to. We're in the joy business at the end of the day as a visitor economy, and we want to create joy for everybody. And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely right. It's all about that welcome, and we know how welcoming the Northeast is anyway, and it's just extending that. And as you say, I love that phrase. It's the joy business, and it's creating those special memories that people will take with them forever.
Marvellous. And just to finish off, what would be your one piece of advice for businesses wanting to improve their accessibility, their inclusiveness, or just to provide more joy to their visitors?
I think it's to remember that this is not necessarily complicated or expensive. It's about the welcome. It's about that thoughtfulness, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and thinking, what can I do that will give that person the best experience possible today? And that's runs through the entire organisation. Whoever, a visitor meets, they are that brand in that moment. So it's everyone's role, but it's what visitor economy businesses are already good at, is simply thinking about that in a wider sense.
For me, I would say transparency. Be honest and upfront about what you do have from an accessibility and inclusion perspective and what you don't have, because I would much rather know that in advance and be able to then plan my day, plan my trip around that, than arrive and find things not as I expected them. That's going to be much more disruptive for any disabled person to ultimately not have their expectations managed properly before they come. And if it is around that creation of joy, well, joy can much more easily exist when I know what to expect.
I would say listen, learn, and act. Make sure that you have dialogue with your visitors and with your guests, and seek feedback and listen to that feedback, and be okay if there are a few things highlighted that weren't quite perfect, and really try and understand how you can then make improvements on the back of that. Act on that and make small changes on a regular basis, and it will all build up.
Brilliant. Well, a massive thank you to my guests, Ross Calladine, to Jane Cooper and to Carrie-Ann Lightly for joining me today and for helping support Purple Tuesday here in the North East as well. As we always say, please do head to destinationnortheastengland.co.uk. There are tons of resources, opportunities, insights, data, basically everything you could need to help your visitor economy business thrive, and especially to help you on your accessibility journey. There's a place there to sign up to the Everybody Welcome programme, and there's a whole ton of advice and resources on the way for businesses to help them on their accessibility journey. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Destination North East England is a partnership between Newcastle Gateshead Initiative, Visit County Durham and Visit Northumberland, funded by UK Government on behalf of all 7 local authorities.